You've been manifesting wrong your entire life, and it's not your fault. They told you to think positive, visualize your dream life, repeat your affirmations until your voice went numb. They told you to hustle with good vibes, keep your frequency high, and wait for the universe to reward your effort. And you believed it, because why wouldn't you? You were taught that manifestation is about getting what you want by thinking the right thoughts. But what if none of that was ever the point? What if trying so hard to get is the very energy that keeps it away? You don't manifest by chasing. You manifest by collapsing timelines. And the truth is, you're not calling something into being. You're tuning into a version of reality that already exists. The one where you already have it. That version of you isn't far away. It's right here, waiting for you to stop forcing and start remembering. You've been taught manifestation like it's a task. But in the quantum world, it's a state. Most people approach manifestation like a battlefield. They affirm what they don't believe, visualize what they quietly doubt, and grind through endless routines hoping the universe is taking notes. But the quantum field doesn't respond to effort. It responds to alignment. And this is where almost every spiritual teaching falls apart. Not because it's wrong, but because it's incomplete. You've been taught to chase your desires as if they're outside of you, when in reality, they already exist in the infinite landscape of the quantum. You're not pulling something in from a distance. You're collapsing into the version of reality where it's already true. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people are stuck not because they aren't trying hard enough, but because they're trying too hard. The universe doesn't need you to hustle your way into abundance. It needs you to embody the frequency of abundance before it shows up. That's the part that gets missed. Because trying hard isn't just unhelpful, it's actually the problem. When you chase something, you're telling the field, I don't have it. And the field, being precise and unbothered by your words, mirrors that frequency back to you. That's why people loop. They speak of wealth but vibrate in lack. They talk about love but embody fear. They visualize peace while their nervous system is braced for survival. They think manifestation is about controlling the external, when it's always been about recalibrating the internal. In the quantum, forcing equals friction. When you force, you send out an incoherent signal, one that says one thing with your mind and another with your energy. That's not clarity, that's noise. You've been trained to measure effort as progress, conditioned to believe that struggle equals value. So when you hear that less effort might bring you more, your logical mind resists. But this isn't about laziness, it's about precision. Alignment doesn't mean sitting on the couch and wishing. It means becoming the clear signal that matches the timeline you want to live in. The universe doesn't grant desires like wishes. It reflects states like mirrors. And if your state is chaotic, doubtful, anxious, then no amount of scripting or vision boarding will override what your body is already broadcasting. That's why manifestation often feels like a lie to people, because they've been told to change their thoughts while their body is still frozen in fear. They've been told to affirm success while their subconscious is wired for scarcity. But this isn't about performance, it's about coherence. And coherence doesn't come from saying the right things, it comes from feeling the truth in your bones. Some truths are too raw for YouTube. That's why we created Insights Academy, our free newsletter where we share what we can't post publicly. You'll also get a free copy of the Kybalion ebook for a limited time. Links in the description. Most people are trapped in spiritual performance, doing the right rituals, following the right teachers, wearing crystals and burning sage and reading about vibration, all while still vibrating in resistance. But energy doesn't lie. You can do all the right things and still send the wrong signal, because it's not about what you do, it's about what you are. And what you are is a vibrational blueprint constantly interacting with a field that only speaks frequency. If your signal is fractured, the results will be 2. This is why people feel like they're pushing against a wall that never moves. Because they are. They're pushing against a version of reality that doesn't respond to pushing. In the quantum world, reality flows toward coherence, not control. The more clearly you embody the frequency of already having, the faster the field mirrors it back. But that embodiment can't be faked. It's not a mantra, It's a state. You can't just say, "I am abundant," if your nervous system is in survival mode. The field doesn't read your words. It reads your signal. And that signal becomes coherent only when your thoughts, emotions, and physical body are all aligned in the same direction. That's the real secret. Not visualization, not repetition, but integration. When all layers of you are saying the same thing, the quantum field doesn't need convincing. It simply reflects. We need to strip away the mysticism for a moment. Not because spirituality is wrong, but because it often drifts into metaphor, where precision is needed. Quantum shifting isn't wishful thinking dressed in spiritual language. It's physics, consciousness, and embodiment, converging in a way most people have never been taught. You're not floating through random experiences. You are constantly collapsing possibilities into form, whether you know it or not. Every second of every day, your attention is acting like a scalpel, slicing one potential into physical reality and discarding the rest. This isn't an opinion, it's the observer effect, one of the most counterintuitive discoveries in quantum physics. In the quantum world, nothing is fixed until it is observed. Subatomic particles, what everything in this universe is made from, don't exist in a solid location until consciousness interacts with them. They exist as probabilities, waves of potential, not particles of matter. But the moment you focus, the wave collapses. The probability becomes reality. That's what physicists call the collapse of the wave function. But here's the part no one tells you: you are always observing. Not just with your eyes or your thoughts, but with your subconscious, your emotions, your nervous system, and your beliefs. The observer isn't just your mind, it's your entire energetic state. So when people say, thoughts become things, they're not entirely wrong, but they're only seeing the surface. It's not just about what you think consciously, it's about what you're broadcasting beneath the surface. Your subconscious mind is the more consistent observer. It's the signal that never stops. That's why changing your reality isn't about positive thinking. It's about subconscious coherence. If you say, "I am wealthy," but your subconscious still believes you're unsafe, unworthy, or unprepared, it will collapse the timeline that matches the deeper broadcast, not the surface intention. This is where most manifestation teachings collapse under their own weight. They give you a mental formula, but forget that you are a full-body transmitter. And the field doesn't read your words, it reads your frequency. That frequency is shaped by your nervous system, your trauma patterns, your emotional set point, your internal safety, your physiology. You don't create from language, you create from state. This is also why the quantum field doesn't care about how hard you try. You can't outperform your internal signal with external effort. If your frequency is incoherent, no checklist or method will override the friction. It's like trying to scream abundance into a microphone that's picking up static. It doesn't matter how clear your message is if the channel is full of noise. That's why you've seen things fall into place when you weren't even trying. A moment of surrender, a casual conversation, a relaxed choice. Why? Because in that state, your body wasn't bracing, your thoughts weren't frantic, your emotions weren't gripping, you were aligned without effort. And in that moment, the field mirrored back your clarity, not your words, but your being. You can't fool the quantum field. That's not a warning, it's a relief. Because once you understand how it works, you stop relying on mental tricks or rituals and start tuning your internal state like a precise instrument. You begin to notice how your breathing changes your energy, how your posture affects your presence, how your beliefs set the parameters for what's even possible. It's not random, it's not mystical, it's patterned, responsive, and intimate. The quantum doesn't play favorites. It doesn't reward the most deserving or the most disciplined. It reflects the most coherent. That's the foundation of quantum shifting. You don't wait for reality to prove it's working. You shift into the version of you that's already living it, already being it, already broadcasting it. You don't do that with words, you do it with alignment. And once you do, the field responds instantly, because it has no choice. That's how the mechanics work. The universe doesn't care what you want. That may sound harsh, but it's one of the most liberating truths you'll ever hear. It's not listening to your wish list, your affirmations, or your carefully crafted vision board. It's responding to your frequency. And your frequency is not what you say you want, it's what you are. Most people speak abundance while vibrating in lack. They say, "I want freedom," but every action they take is rooted in fear. They ask for love while walking through life armored in self-protection, and then they wonder why nothing changes. They think the field isn't listening, when in fact it's listening too well. The quantum doesn't filter your signal through your intentions. It reflects what's most dominant, your emotional baseline, your beliefs, the energy behind your actions. Think of the field like a mirror, not an emotional mirror, not a moral mirror, just a perfect, neutral reflection of your dominant frequency. If your internal reality is one of scarcity, the field doesn't judge it or try to teach you a lesson. It simply mirrors scarcity back. Not because you deserve it, not because you're doing it wrong, but because that's the signal you're broadcasting with the most coherence. If you're broadcasting "I need," then you collapse the version of reality where you are still in need. If you're broadcasting "It's already done," the field aligns with the timeline where it's already true. This is why people often feel stuck while doing all the right things. They follow every technique, say every affirmation, meditate, journal, and visualize, but they never check their state. They never stop to feel the tension underneath. Their body is still holding the vibration of waiting, of effort, of not yet. And in the language of the quantum, that's the signal being received. The field doesn't hear your words. It hears your tone, not your speaking tone, but your energetic one. It hears if your desire is soaked in desperation. It hears if your intention is a mask for fear. You can say, "I am love" 100 times, but if you're still terrified of rejection, if your chest is tight, if your heart is closed, the message is scrambled. The field can only reflect what's clear. And clarity only comes from internal coherence. That's the real reason why surrender is so powerful. Not because it's a moral virtue, but because it brings your system into alignment. When you surrender, you drop the static. You stop arguing with reality. You stop forcing, resisting, doubting. And in that space of quiet certainty, the signal gets stronger. You stop being noise and start becoming frequency. Most people try to control manifestation from the outside in, but real quantum shifting is inside out. You don't pull in your desires, you match them. You don't chase timelines, you tune into them. That's how a radio works. You don't yell at the static to play the right song. You turn the dial, you match the frequency, and suddenly the song is there, not because it appeared out of nowhere, but because you finally aligned with it. This is the missing piece most teachings never touch. They treat manifestation like magic or mindset, but not like mechanics. But once you understand the mechanics, you stop wondering if it works. You start asking, what am I broadcasting right now? What emotion is leading me? What identity am I carrying? What internal truth is more powerful than my external performance? Because here's the secret. The field isn't responding to your highest hope. It's responding to your strongest signal. That signal is a blend of your thoughts, emotions, memories, body chemistry, and beliefs. If even one of those layers is out of sync, the frequency weakens. But when all of them move together, when your system stops sending mixed messages and starts humming in harmony, the quantum responds without hesitation. You don't manifest what you want. You manifest what you are. And that's not a limitation. That's your greatest power. There's a difference between knowing and becoming, between saying the right words and being the right frequency. And it's this gap, this subtle but powerful divide, that keeps most people spinning their wheels, performing manifestation instead of living it. Because the quantum field doesn't respond to what you perform. It responds to what you embody. You can read every book, listen to every guru, and follow every ritual. But if your energy is scattered, if your thoughts say one thing, your emotions scream another, and your actions move in the opposite direction, nothing shifts. The field doesn't respond to pieces of you. It responds to the whole. That's coherence. Coherence is when every part of you is saying the same thing. When your thoughts, your emotions, your nervous system, your breath, your posture, your choices, all move in harmony. That's not spiritual fluff. That's electromagnetic precision. The human heart, for example, has an electromagnetic field that is far more powerful than the brain's. When your heart and brain are in sync, when you feel what you believe and act from that state, you become a coherent signal. That signal is magnetic, and not metaphorically, physically. It has measurable power, measurable reach, and the quantum field mirrors back that signal with speed and clarity. But most people aren't living in coherence. They're living in contradiction. They say, I trust the process, but micromanage every step. They say, I'm ready to receive, but keep scanning for what's missing. Their nervous system is still in survival while their mind is imagining ease. And in the quantum world, this isn't just energetic noise, it's a scrambled broadcast. No different than trying to stream high-definition video through a broken signal. The image won't land, not because the content doesn't exist, but because the frequency can't support it. This is why techniques don't work on their own. Affirmations, journaling, vision boards, they're not wrong, they're just incomplete. They're tools, not engines. They can reinforce a frequency you already embody, but they can't create coherence from chaos. You can say, I am love all day, but if your heart is guarded and your body is tense, the field doesn't hear the words, it hears the block. And here's the part no one likes to hear. Coherence can't be faked. You can't trick the field into responding to a signal you're not actually living. You can't manipulate alignment. You must become it. That's not about being perfect. It's about being real, regulated, connected, inwardly clear. It's about tuning your internal system to the reality you want before the reality ever shows up. So how do you start? Not by doing more, but by feeling more. By slowing down enough to notice your baseline. By asking yourself not, what do I want, but what am I broadcasting? Are your emotions congruent with your desires? Are your actions reinforcing or resisting your intentions? Are your beliefs supporting your vision or sabotaging it quietly beneath the surface? You don't become coherent overnight. But you can feel the shift almost instantly when you begin to realign. Breath slows, mind softens, body opens, resistance dissolves. And in that moment, you're no longer begging the field to change. You are the change, and the field has no choice but to respond. Embodiment means your entire system is anchored in the timeline you want, not wishing for it, not hoping for it, not reaching for it, but living as if it's already true. Because in the quantum, when your frequency matches the desired outcome, the timeline collapses. Reality doesn't argue, it reflects. This is the difference between attraction and alignment. Attraction suggests you still need to pull something toward you. Alignment means you've already become the match. And in the quantum, becoming is the mechanism. You don't get what you want by convincing the universe. You get what you want by becoming the version of you who no longer needs to try. Letting go isn't weakness. In fact, it's the most misunderstood form of power in the quantum field. Most of us have been conditioned to believe that control equals strength. That the more we push, manage, strategize, and micromanage, the closer we get to what we want. But in the mechanics of the quantum, control is often the very energy that delays the outcome. Because the field doesn't respond to pressure, it responds to precision. And the most precise signal you can send is trust. Letting go is not the same as giving up. Giving up is despair. Letting go is clarity. It's the moment you stop sending mixed messages into the field. When you release the grip of how and when and fully anchor into the frequency of already done, everything begins to change. Because now the signal is coherent. Now the broadcast isn't laced with desperation or neediness. It's laced with certainty. And the quantum field doesn't respond to hope. It responds to certainty. We don't just struggle to let go because we're impatient. We struggle because we've been programmed to believe that surrender means we've lost control. But here's the quantum paradox. Surrender is what gives you control. Not over the external world, but over the one thing that truly creates your reality, your state. When you stop needing something to arrive, you shift from the frequency of lack to the frequency of embodiment. And that single shift collapses timelines faster than any vision board or mantra ever could. People often say, "I let go, but nothing happened." What they mean is they said they let go while still clenching internally, still checking the outcome, still measuring the results. True surrender is a nervous system event. You feel it in your body. It's a softness, a release, a knowing. It's when the need dissolves into presence. When you stop asking, "When will it come?" and start living as if it already has. Not to perform, not to manipulate, but because the reality you're choosing is more real to you than the absence of it. Letting go also breaks the loop of resistance. When you grip tightly to something, you create a signal of scarcity. You're saying to the field, "I don't have it, I need it." And the field mirrors back exactly that, a version of you still needing, still waiting, still not aligned. But when you release, when you drop the urgency and step into neutrality, the signal becomes clean. You're no longer distorting the field with static. You're now operating like a tuning fork, resonant, steady, aligned. It's no surprise that people often experience breakthroughs right after giving up. They say things like, "The moment I stopped trying, it finally came." That's not magic, that's mechanics. The moment you stop resisting with your frequency, the field can finally deliver what's been hovering right outside your reach. Not because it wasn't available before, but because your resistance kept pushing it away. And there's another layer to this that's rarely talked about. Letting go is the final test of belief. Can you trust what you can't yet see? Can you act from the frequency of the future, even when the present hasn't caught up yet? That's what separates the people who shift from the people who stay stuck. Not discipline, not obsession, but surrender. Because letting go isn't the end of manifestation. It's the beginning. It's the point where you stop trying to bend reality to your timeline and start allowing it to arrive on its own terms. You stop wrestling with the field and start dancing with it. You stop being the obstacle and start becoming the channel. That's what letting go really is. It's not passivity, it's power without force. And it's the moment your entire system stops performing and starts trusting. Not in some external outcome, but in the deeper knowing that what you desire isn't outside of you, it's already within. You just had to stop gripping so tightly to finally let it in. At the quantum level, nothing exists in a fixed form until it is observed. It sounds abstract, like a physics riddle, but it's one of the most profound truths about the nature of your reality. Everything in your life, your relationships, your finances, your health, your circumstances, exists in the quantum field as a range of possibilities. Not one future, but many. And which of those realities collapses into your experience depends entirely on the observer. That observer is not just your eyes or your conscious mind, it's the whole of you. The act of observing collapses the wave. That's not philosophy, that's quantum mechanics. But what most people miss is who the observer really is. You don't create your reality from fleeting thoughts. You collapse timelines through the frequency of your observation, through the lens of your subconscious patterns, your nervous system responses, and your emotional signatures. That's the signal. That's what determines which version of reality becomes physical. You can say, "I believe in abundance," but if your body still tenses when you open your banking app, if your gut still clenches at the idea of risk, then your real observer, the energetic one, is broadcasting lack. And that version of you is the one collapsing the field. That's why manifestation isn't about being spiritually correct on the surface. It's about reprogramming the internal observer. Because the field doesn't care about your performance. It mirrors your baseline. This is also why people who don't even know about quantum shifting still manifest results. They're not using words or techniques. They're just clear. Their observer isn't clogged with fear or contradiction. Their nervous system isn't locked in survival. So they think a thought, feel it in their body, act in alignment, and the field reflects back with stunning accuracy. Meanwhile, Others are stuck in loops, not because they lack desire, but because the observer inside them is stuck in fear, doubt, or disbelief. This is why it's not enough to just know you create your reality. You have to become the observer who believes it, who lives it, who doesn't need to constantly test or check or beg for confirmation. Because the moment you trust your role in the process, the whole game changes. You move from unconscious collapse to intentional selection, and that's when things start to move fast. But here's where it gets even deeper. The observer effect isn't just a concept, it's happening every second. You're constantly collapsing outcomes by the way you move through the world, the way you breathe, the way you react to discomfort, the stories you tell yourself when no one is listening. You're not manifesting with isolated moments, you're manifesting with your default settings. And unless you change those, nothing you do externally will stick. This is why embodiment matters. Because when your internal observer aligns with your desired timeline, when your body, mind, and energy are all on the same channel, collapse happens with precision. There's no lag. There's no resistance. There's just a clean selection from the infinite shelf of realities available to you. And this is where things get interesting. Because once you see that you're the observer, you stop waiting for signs. You stop outsourcing your power to universal timing or fate. You realize the field isn't deciding for you. It's following you, tracking your frequency, matching your broadcast. So instead of asking, when will it happen? You start asking, who am I being right now? Because that version of you is the one steering the collapse. And until that observer shifts, nothing outside you truly can. Because once you really grasp this, once you embody the observer, you stop reacting to life and start sculpting it. You stop reaching for a better reality and start choosing it, not from ego, but from clarity. And the quantum field simply responds, as it always has, to the frequency of who you are. You can't out-manifest your nervous system. That's the inconvenient truth most spiritual teachings leave out. You can meditate, journal, visualize, and repeat affirmations until your voice cracks. But if your body is in a constant state of survival, none of it sticks. The quantum field doesn't just read your mind, it reads your biology, and the nervous system is the transmitter. Most people are trying to build new realities on top of old trauma. They're reaching for expansion while their body is locked in contraction. They speak abundance, but their system is primed to detect threat. They declare love, but their baseline is abandonment. And they wonder why their reality never shifts, why the same loops keep repeating, the same walls reappear, the same outcomes manifest under different disguises. It's because the signal coming from the body overrides the words coming from the mouth. In the quantum, frequency is law, and your nervous system sets the baseline of that frequency more than anything else. Not your vision board, not your morning routine, your ability to feel safe in the energy you're trying to embody. You can't attract a timeline of peace while your body is addicted to chaos. You can't collapse into abundance while you're vibrating in fear of not having enough. And you definitely can't align with love if your cells still brace for betrayal. This doesn't mean you're broken. It means you've been conditioned. Every stress response, every freeze, every shutdown, every overreaction, it was your system trying to protect you. But what protected you then may now be the very thing blocking your shift, because the field doesn't hear your reasoning. It doesn't care that you're trying. It mirrors the most dominant signal, and for most, that signal is survival. This is why nervous system regulation is the foundation of quantum shifting. Because when your body feels safe, it opens, it receives, it softens into trust. And in that state of openness, your frequency sharpens, the signal clears, the collapse accelerates. You become magnetic, not by force, but by nature. We have to stop treating manifestation like a mental game. It's a full-body practice. Your breath matters, your posture matters, your sleep, your food, your inner dialogue, they all feed the signal. When you learn to regulate your system, you're not just healing, you're aligning. You're telling the field, I'm no longer waiting for a different reality to feel safe. I feel safe now. And that makes me ready. And here's the other truth. Your nervous system knows when you're lying. You can't fake safety. You can't fake trust. Your body either believes the new frequency or it doesn't. That's why shallow affirmations fall flat. The moment your nervous system detects a mismatch, the signal weakens, and the field reflects that misalignment. So the question becomes not, what do I want, but what feels safe enough for me to receive? That question cuts through the fantasy and hits the root. Because maybe you're not blocked. Maybe your system is just protecting you from a version of success or love or visibility that, deep down, still feels threatening. And until that threat is dissolved, not ignored or bypassed, but integrated, no vision board will change a thing. Healing isn't just for recovery, it's for alignment. When your system feels safe in the frequency of your desired timeline, it stops fighting it. It stops resisting. It stops sending counter signals into the field. And suddenly, the shift that felt stuck for years moves in a week. Not because you tried harder, but because you stopped broadcasting fear underneath the effort. This is the quiet work. The slow, deep, non-glamorous work. And yet, it's the most magnetic thing you can do. Regulate the system, raise the frequency, and watch the field respond. Because at the end of the day, manifestation isn't about what you do, it's about what you can safely hold. The nervous system decides what you're ready for, and the field simply follows. The reason most people never shift timelines isn't because they lack desire, it's because they never interrupt the loop. The same thoughts, the same emotions, the same reactions, day after day. A cycle so familiar, it feels like identity. But here's the thing, identity is not fixed. It's a feedback loop between what you believe and how you behave. And in the quantum field, that loop is everything. Each time you wake up and repeat the same story about who you are, what you can have, what always goes wrong, you're not just remembering, you're reactivating a frequency. And every reactivation deepens the groove, not metaphorically, neurologically, energetically, emotionally. This is how reality gets hardwired. Not because it's true, but because it's rehearsed. You're not stuck because your desires are too big. You're stuck because your broadcast hasn't changed. You're repeating the same signal into the field, then wondering why the scenery doesn't shift. But the universe is obedient. It reflects your most consistent frequency, not your most passionate wish. It's not your vision that changes your life, it's your vibration. We tend to underestimate how much repetition shapes reality. We think it's about intensity, one big ritual, one big moment of clarity. But the quantum field doesn't respond to spikes. It responds to coherence over time. It responds to what you practice, not what you promise. And this is where most manifestation fails. Not because the technique is wrong, but because the inner repetition is still laced with doubt, lack, and contradiction. It's not that the old programming is too powerful, it's just too familiar. And until you disrupt it, your body will keep choosing it. Not because it's true, but because it feels safe. The brain prefers predictable pain over unfamiliar freedom. That's the twisted comfort of the loop. It feeds itself. And every time you respond to life with the same fear, the same shutdown, the same reaction, you feed it too. So how do you break it? Not through force, but through conscious repetition of a new signal, through practicing a frequency until it becomes your baseline. You shift the loop by showing up differently in the same situations, by breathing through the old trigger instead of reacting, by speaking the new truth even when your voice shakes, by choosing to act from the version of you that already exists on the timeline you desire. And that version of you isn't distant. It's not waiting 10 years down the road. It's waiting in the next choice, in the next breath, in the next moment. You decide not to rehearse the pain again. The field is listening, not for your perfect words, but for your consistent frequency. And every time you show up in coherence, even if it's subtle, you reinforce the signal. And that signal becomes magnetic. You don't need a full identity overhaul overnight. You just need enough conscious interruption to weaken the old pattern. Enough awareness to pause before spiraling. enough regulation to hold a new response. Every small act of alignment matters, because the quantum doesn't measure effort, it measures resonance. And remember this, every time you interrupt the old frequency, you're not just changing your future, you're healing your past. You're telling your system, we're safe to do this differently now. And that's the moment the loop loses power, because loops rely on unconsciousness. The second you become conscious, you create choice. And choice is where the shift begins. Don't wait for a breakthrough to change your signal. Be the frequency that causes one. Don't let the old identity write the next scene. Interrupt it. Speak something new into the field. Act like it's already real. Because the future you want is already coded into the field. It's just waiting for your current to catch up. And if you're still waiting for the right time to change, this is it. There's no later. There's only repetition or revolution. Choose the one that serves you. You weren't born to chase timelines, you were born to create them. But for most of your life, that truth was hidden beneath layers of programming. What you should do, who you ought to be, and how you're supposed to live. Somewhere along the way, you were handed a script. Get the job, earn the title, find the partner, buy the house, retire, then finally rest. But here's the thing, they never told you who wrote that script, or why it never quite fit. The truth is, that script was designed for predictability, not purpose. Safety, not expansion. Control, not creation. But quantum shifting doesn't just offer a new life. It demands a new relationship with purpose. One not built on performance, but on alignment. And alignment starts with remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. That self, the authentic, unfiltered, wildly curious self, still exists. It's not gone, just buried. Under deadlines, expectations, guilt, and repetition. Purpose in the quantum field is not a job description or a passion project. It's not something outside of you waiting to be found. It's a frequency you return to. It's what happens when your being and your doing are finally in sync, when your actions echo your truth, when your energy speaks louder than your words. In that state, you don't chase outcomes, you become the outcome. This is why so many people feel empty after achieving what they once thought would fulfill them. Because success without alignment is just a more decorated version of the same loop. You may have climbed the ladder, but if it's leaning against the wrong wall, the view still feels wrong. Quantum purpose isn't about elevation, it's about recalibration. Not climbing higher, but tuning deeper. The question is no longer, what should I do with my life? But, what state do I want to live in? Because in the quantum, your state creates your path. Joyful people find joyful opportunities. Aligned people meet aligned relationships. Empowered people receive empowered reflections. It's never been about chasing the thing. It's always been about becoming the match. And to become the match, you must release the old definitions of purpose that were tied to sacrifice, martyrdom, or perfection. Your purpose isn't to exhaust yourself in service of others. It's not to prove your worth by achieving more. It's to become so deeply yourself that your very presence becomes a permission slip for others to do the same. This is the new leadership. Not control, but coherence. Not dominance, but embodiment. In this space, your life becomes the message. And the quantum field doesn't just respond, it amplifies. The clearer you are, the further your signal travels. The more you live authentically, the more timelines bend around your presence. Not because you're special, but because you're real. But here's the warning. This kind of freedom can't be outsourced. No guru, no system, no five-step formula can give it to you. You have to claim it. You have to want truth more than comfort, alignment more than applause, and integrity more than influence. That's the cost. But the return? Limitless. If you've come this far, it means something inside you is already waking up. You're starting to remember, not just information, but who you are underneath the programming. And the beauty is, you're not alone. There are others waking up too, quietly shifting their frequencies, redefining success, living from the inside out. This is how the world changes. Not from the top down, but from the frequency up. And if you've resonated with what we've explored, there's more, much more, that can't be said publicly. That's why we built the Insights Academy, a free newsletter filled with deeper truths we can't always share here. You'll also receive a digital copy of the Kybalion for free, only for a limited time. Links in the description. Don't wait on this, because this is your moment, not to become someone else, but to remember who you already are. You were never broken. You were never behind. You were simply in the wrong script. And now you know. Now you see. Now you choose. Your timeline begins with you. Your energy is the blueprint. Your coherence is the code. And your presence is the permission. You don't need to force anything. Just live it. Walk it. Embody it. If this video resonated with you, let us know by commenting. I understood it.